Today's daf is daf Ayin Gimel. We're going to begin by the Mishnah on daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis by the new Mishnah. So the Mishnah says like this: Gon of al pishnayim. If a person stole either a ox or a sheep, and two witnesses is established based on the testimony of two witnesses. Two witnesses said, "We saw this person steal an ox or a sheep," and also the witnesses say, "Not only did we see the guy steal the sheep or the ox, but but the witnesses say that he shechted the animal or sold it." Now, and what happened? So basically, they came and they said the full testimony. We saw them steal it, and we saw him shecht it. So what happens? And then, these witnesses were found to be Eidim Zemin, conspiring witnesses. So what's the din? Mishalmim hakel. The first Mishnah says, first din of the Mishnah is, these witnesses pay everything. In other words, not only do they pay the principal, they pay the kedem, but they have to pay dollar to the hay as well. Why? Because we know the Torah says kasher zamam, masisalei kasher zamam. They wanted to extract. They wanted these people to go ahead and, based on their testimony, to pay not only the kefil a double, but to pay also dollar to the hay. So, since these witnesses attempted to obligate this alleged thief to pay 4 or 5 times the amount, they themselves have to pay the full amount. That's the first din of the Mishnah. Next din of the Mishnah, gon of al pishnayim. With regards to one who stole an ox or a sheep, as established based on the testimony of two witnesses. However, the witnesses are testifying that he shechted the animal or sold it based on the testimony of two other witnesses. So the first din of the Mishnah, it was the same witnesses that testified everything. Here, you have one set of witnesses, or two sets of witnesses, two witnesses testified that they stole the ox and sheep, and then you have another two witnesses that testify that. Now what happened? And then so then they were found to be conspiring witnesses. So what's the din? So the Mishnah says, the first set of witnesses who testified about the theft of the animal, they pay kefil, because that's what they conspired to do. They tried to extract from him that he should pay for the animal, so now he has to pay kefil. And the last set of witnesses who attested to the tafel machar, they have to pay the quote-unquote alleged ganev. They have to pay him tashlum mishleisha. They have to pay, number one, they have to pay kefil for the sheep, and they have to pay 3 times for the ox, because that's what they conspired to cause them to pay over the kefil. So that's the din. So he gets basically kefil from the first set of witnesses, and then he has to pay. He gets the other two either from the, if it's a sheep, he gets dalid, and if it's an ox, he gets hay. That's the second din. So for the third din. So again, now you saw Achrenim Zemim. What if only the witness in the last set were found to be Edim Zemim, but the testimony of the theft remains intact? So what's the din? The Ganev pays the double amount to the animal's owner, because he stole it. And the second set of witnesses pays the Ganev 2 or 3 times the amount over the kefil, which is what they conspired to cause him to pay. Now, so that's last din. If only one individual from the last set of witnesses was found to be conspiring witness. So in the first case, we said that the Aiden that said that he stole it, they're not a zemim, but the ones who claim that it's tafel machar, they're zemim. Now, what if what if only one individual from the last set of witness was found to be Edim Zemin? So what's the din? The second testimony is batal, as was not submitted by 2 valid witnesses. However, the first set is good. If, let's say, one individual from the first set of witnesses found to be Edim Zemin, the entire testimony concerning the Ganev is nullified. The reason is that if there's no theft established by the testimony, then ain't tvichim and mechira. There's no shechting the animal. There's no liability of selling it. So that's the fourth dilemma of the Mishnah. Again, if the guy stole and two Eidim came along and said you were tafach u'macher, and you were ganav, and you also tafach u'macher, and then they were zemim, they have to pay everything. They have to pay kasher zomar. Now, if let's say you have two sets of witnesses, one set said we saw the gneva, and other people said we saw you tafach u'macher, so then they all were found in zemimim. So the first one has to pay kefil, and the last two have to pay either another two or three. Now, what if you have two sets of witnesses, but only the achreinim were found zemimim, so he has to pay kefil because he has to testify that he stole. With sad the dalad v'hei, that he doesn't have to pay because they're eidim zemimim fakir, the eidim zemimim have to go and pay this guy back either 2 or 3 times the amount. Now, if let's say the echad one, let's say from the second set of witnesses, and testified that he shechted or sold, so they were zemin, so then the entire edus of the second edus is batal. If let's say echad min harishenim zemin, so then all the edim are batal, even if they didn't have edim zemin on the tzvicha the mechira. Why? Because in order to read the tzvicha mechira, there has to be established that it was gneva, and since they were mavatal the whole gneva, so it doesn't work. All right. Zog the Gemara. Itmar. Now, the halach is that a person who is considered Edom Zemin, he is basically barred from providing testimony in the future. So now the Gemara is going to cite a fundamental machlekes with regards to this disqualification. So let's say the guy gave 10 days he gave testimony, and you only found Edom Zemin now on the 10th day. So what about the testimony that he gave on all the 9 days beforehand? Is a megalim afraid the guy was a shakran or not? So now there's a fundamental machlekes between Abaye and Rava. Itmar edim zemu. Abaye says that in regards to a conspiring witness, Abaye amar l'mafreya nufsal. He's disqualified retroactively from when he provided his testimony, which means any testimony that he may have provided after the point in time is retroactively nullified. And we're going to see what that means. Abaye says that he's disqualified retroactively for when he provided his testimony, and any eidos that he may have provided after that point in time is retroactively nullified. And Rava says no. He's disqualified only from that point forward. In other words, from when he was established to be an Edom Zemim, but not retroactively from when he provided testimony. So only at the time that he actually was conspired to be Edom Zemim, that we say Mikanu Lahaba, whatever he says, we can't trust him. But the Selim Afreya, let's say he gave Edus face. He gave Edus, let's say, on a Monday. And then he gave Edus on a Tuesday. And then on Thursday, it was established that he was Ed Zemim. So Abaye is going to say, yeah, whenever he gave from the time that he said his original testimony, in the middle, etc., it's going to be batal. And Rav is going to say no, and the Gemara is going to explain. Abaye says he's disqualified retroactively. Why? Because at the time that he testified, he is considered a wicked man. There says, do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness, which is interpreted to mean do not allow a wicked man to serve as a witness. So the fact that the second that you establish that the guy's a wicked man, we don't say when Beis Din said that when the Beis Din made him an Eid Zaymim, it's when he gave his original testimony that made him an Eid Zaymim. So therefore, Rabbi is going to say, I'll touch it to Rashanid. Now Rava says, he argues and says, Mikana La'abo Nifsal. He says that only from the point forward, he's considered Eid Zaymim. Why? It's not based on logic, because he says like this, Eid Zaymim Chidushu. He says that this whole Eid Zaymim, according to Abaye, is Chiddush. It's a novelty. It's not based on logic. And therefore, why? In the case of two witnesses against two other witnesses, in which case, neither testimony should be accepted. So my cause is that Tzayte Lahani. Why do you see that causes you to listen to the second set of witnesses who testified to the first set were not at the scene of the event? See, Aslani, you should listen to the first set of witnesses who testified about the event. Yet the Torah teaches that the Kas Shniya, the second set of witnesses, is always deemed credible over the first witness. Does that make sense to you? You have two witnesses that say Azay. And then the other two witnesses, you have two witnesses that testify that this happened. Two sets of witnesses that testify Yimonimaisan. It's a Chiddush, according to Rava. So why do we believe the second set? Okay, it's a Chiddush. And therefore, you only have the right to disqualify them from the time of the Chiddush. In other words, after the Teda says. Other people say, Rav also holds the Gabaya, the Amar the Mafreo Nifsal, who says by right of Eidim Zemim should be disqualified retroactively when he provides his testimony. And here, this is the reason of Rava for not disqualifying him, the Mafreya, Dafayin Gimel, Omen Aleph, Yishum, say the Delakotas. It's due to the potential monetary loss for purchases. What's the case of the Lakotas? What does it mean, Hefsel Lakotas? The case of the Hefsel Lakotas is whose acquisition has been validated by these witnesses between the time of the witnesses' first testimony and when they were considered Eidim Zemim. Now, if the disqualification of the witness were applied to the Mafreya, as by right it should, so all these transactions would be nullified, which would cause a loss to the purchasers. The Gemara says, "My benai." What's the practical difference between these two explanations of Rava's opinion? According to both opinions, Rava did not apply Rava did not apply this. What's the difference between the two? So the Gemara says the difference is the asidu beitrei lechad, where two witnesses testified about one of the witnesses that he was not at the scene of the supposed crime, beitrei lechad, and two other witnesses testified about the other one witness in a similar manner. Inami, or the baslinon begazlu sasa. There's a practical difference between the two explanations in a case where two witnesses disqualified the first set of witnesses by testifying that he had once committed robbery and therefore is unfit to give testimony. Gemara explains, according to the version who says, Rava says that it's inside a chiddush, so therefore, in these two circumstances, there's no chiddush, and therefore he would agree that the disqualification should be the mafreya. But according to the version in which he says it was due mitzad potential loss for purchasers, then these two circumstances there is concern for potential loss for purchasers, and in these circumstances as well, Rava would reject the whole of Mafreya. Rabbi Yirmiyah was said, Rapapa once took action, ruled in accordance with the opinion of Rava, and rejected the retroactive disqualification of Eidim Zemim. Rashi says no. Allah is like Abaya, and as we know, the famous halach is always a grava, or whenever, but in Yal Kagam, in these halachas of Yush and Eidim, Lechi, Yidushin, Yet, and Mumar, halacha here is like Abaya. So, Yal Kagam, yeah. Memories. Alright, now the Gemara asks a question with regards to Abaya's opinion, from which we learn does it. Now, we learned in our Mishnah, if a person stole an ox or a sheep, it is established based on testimony of two witnesses, and he shechted the animal or sold it, and they are found to be zemin. The law is he has to pay these have to pay everything, including dollar and hay. So the Gemara explains the question. My lav shehidu al ganiba. Was it not referring to a case which the events occur the following: that the Eidim testified concerning the Geneva of the animal, and then they testified concerning the animal's shechting, and then they were rendered Eidim Zemim for the testimony concerning Geneva, and then they were rendered conspiring witnesses for the testimony concerning the shechita. Now, if an enters your mind to say, and according to the opinion of Abaya, that Eidim Zemim is disqualified retroactively from the time he provided the testimony, then Hani, with regards to these witnesses, once they were rendered Eidim Zemim concerning theft, so then it comes out retroactively that when they testified concerning the shechita, that they were disqualified to serve as witnesses. So then, why then must they pay Dal V'Hei for their testimony concerning the animal shchita? He says to this, if a buyer holds Dal Mafreo, then if so, and we go retroactively, so l'chera, the minute that they were considered Edom Zimim, Tzaddik and Eva, so now they're Edom Zimim, and we know Edom Zimim, once they consider Edom Zimim, they're barred from giving testimony. So now, what happens? These Edom that are Edom Zimim of Dal V'Hei were never proper Edom were never considered proper, they were considered disqualified Edom l'chatchila. So that's what the Gemara wants to know. When we are saying in our Mishnah, what happened?
And Kibbutz qualified the name, and they said that Kolel found.
Exactly. So the Gemara wants to bring a raya from this Mishnah. Now the Kabbalah said the Mafrin if so. Why? Because in our case, what happened? Babashis, we're in the Mishnah. The two witnesses came and they said, "We're testifying that this guy stole." And then they found Edom Zemin. And then they came back a few hours later. And they said, by the way, he was also Tfichu Mechira. And then Edom Zim said, no, Bapashtas. I mean, that's not how we look at L'Chatchila, but let's see where the Gemara is going. So L'Chera, if they're considered Edom Zim from the second that it was a Tfichu Dal V'Hei, so why do they have to be Dal V'Hei? They were considered disqualified Edom. So the Gemara says, Amri, what are we dealing with over here? We're dealing with a case where the events did not happen in this sequence, but rather, the first, they were considered Edom Zim with regard to the testimony concerning the animal's shchita. Only afterwards were they considered witnesses with regards to the theft. So they said, it's still safe. Ultimately, when they were subsequently rendered Edom Zemim with regard to the testimony concerning the Geneva, so it becomes clarified retroactively when they testify concerning the Shchita, and they were disqualified. They were disqualified. So now the question is, from Mele, you understood Dal V'Hei, so you're saying, no. The Edom Zemin happened first in the Dal V'Hei, and then on the Kefil, then on the Geneva. Fine, so if they were established to be Geneva, to be Edom Zemin on the Dal V'Hei, so they shouldn't have to pay the Kefil. Make up your mind. So the Gemara says, the halacha is according to the opinion of Abaya, since the Mishnah can be explained where the witnesses Shehidu B'Vasat, which that's how we learned the Chatchila. I don't know what the Gemara's Havamina was. Yeah. Where the witnesses testify concerning the Geneva of the animal and the Shechita at the same time. And then Uzamu, and afterwards they were rendered Edom Zemim. Therefore, even if the disqualification of these witnesses is established to Mafreya, they were not disqualified when they provided their single testimony concerning the Geneva and the Shechita. Which, again, that's how we learned by Parsha of the Mishnah. We learned that it happened in Vasachas. So now the Gemara says, Leima Kitanoi. Let us say that the Machlekes between Abai and Rava, if it's Megala Milsel Mafreya, if it's Bemis and Machlekes Tanoim. Why? Tana Brayso Shnai made them Shagonov. The case where there were two witnesses testifying against somebody, that one of these two witnesses testified, claiming that Shagana testifying that he stole an animal. So these two witnesses claimed that he stole an animal, and they then subsequently testified against him that he shechted the animal, and they were rendered conspiring witnesses only with regard to the testimony concerning the theft. So Eda Shabbat the Mitzasa Batla Kula. So then the halacha is that according to the klal of testimony that was partially invalidated is entirely invalid. In other words, like this: the testimony concerning the shchita of the animal is basically batul, and there's no longer any testimony that b'chlal the animal was even stolen. Therefore, the witness pays kefil for having attempted to cause the alleged theft to pay the amount, while the accused is entirely potter. So again, what happened over? Two people testified that he stole, and they also testified that he was tafach. Now, they were only considered. They only were invalidated Misad Azama on the Geneva, but not on the Tfichas. What's the din? But Uzama Tficha, if they were rendered on the Tficha, so the din is Umesham Tashtumik Kefil. So then they have to pay the Tashtumik Kefil. Now, if they were rendered to the Edom Zem only with regard to the testimony concerning the Shita, so their testimony by the Geneva is valid. So the Ganat pays Tashtumik Kefil because he has Edom that testified, and the witnesses pay the Mishnah. and the witnesses pay Beis or Dalid payment for having attempted to cause the Ganav to pay this amount. Now, the Brisa continues, Rabbi S said, what is the statement said? It said where the Ganav and the Shchita were established by two separate testimonies. But if these matters were established by one single testimony, then even if they were considered Eidim Zemim with regard to the testimony considered Shchita, the halacha is testimony that was partially invalidated is entirely invalidated. So when the testimony concerning the shchita is invalidated, the testimony concerning the theft is likewise also negated. So this is how the Brisa concludes. So now the Gemara analyzes Rabbi S statement. What does it mean? Two separate testimonies. And what does it mean? He said by one single testimony. Now, if we say, what does it mean? If we say by two separate testimonies means literally by two separate testimonies, by two separate sets of witnesses, one of which testifies concerning the Geneva, while the other testifies concerning the Shchita, so this would mean that the expression will come out by one single testimony means by one set of witnesses that testifies to both the Geneva and the Shchita, one should afterwards. Now, Rabbi S says that that the facts are established by one testimony. He means means one set of witnesses testifying about both matters, one after the other. That they testify concerning the theft and then testify concerning the shchita. So therefore, when they are considered Eidim Zemim only with regards to shchita, the halacha is determined in accordance with the principle of Eidim Shabbat Mitzvah Shabbat Kula. Now, Rabbi S would maintain that they are considered to have Eidim Zemim concerning the theft as well. So the question is, from where does he derive this? Why should the earlier testimony about the Geneva be negated by the status as Eidim Zemim for the shchita, for being Eidim Zemim on the shchita? Rather, is it not the case that Rabbi S is talking about by two testimonies? It means by a single testimony that is similar to two testimonies. What is that? You're talking about one set of witnesses who testifies about the Geneva and the Shchita, one matter after the other, two separate times. But if these were established by one single testimony, when the witness testified about both matters at the same time, Rabbi S would agree that these are not considered two separate eidius, despite the fact that they refer to two different events.
What are you becoming of trophy? And right after the other person comes.
Right. It's one, yeah.
No, but you thought you one, and you thought necessarily on.
Yeah, now the Gemara gets this. So, now, the Gemara continues to analyze the machlekes between the Beis and the Chachamim. So, the Amoraim discuss this matter, assume, Kula Alma, everybody agrees. In other words, both the Beis and the Chachamim, if witnesses pauses briefly in his testimony and then continues his testimony, it's considered as one long edus. Right? Because we know, whenever there is the time required for speaking, therefore the two testimonies, the one concerning the Geneva and the one concerning the Shchita, are considered as one single edus. So now the Gemara asks with regards to the above. It must be that the Rabbi S and the Chachamim disagree as they. The Chachamim maintain like Rava, that Eidim Zemim is disqualified from here on, from when he's rendered Eidim Zemim. And since it was only from the time when other witnesses testify about them that they are rendered considered Eidim Zemim, they are rendered concerning when Eidim Zemim only with regard to the testimony concerning the animals shchita that they consider Eidim Zemim. Whereas concerning the Geneva itself, that are not rendered conspiring witnesses. Now, Rabbi S and Rabbi S is going to hold the Mafreon Nifsal like Abaya. That is disqualified retroactively. And since they are disqualified immediately when they testified, if they are rendered conspiring witnesses concerning the Shchita, they are considered Eidim Zemim concerning the theft as well. As we know, the Allah is Kedibur Dami. So the Gemara says like this: Amri Nacham say no. If it were accepted that the halacha is technically then everyone would agree that witnesses are disqualified retroactively, as their testimony with regards to the Geneva would be negated. Rather, what are they really arguing? They're arguing if I say technically dibur is kedibur damar. Rabbo, let's say the Chacham hold that what technically dibur. Chacham hold that technically dibur is lav kedibur damar. He holds that technically dibur is not considered technically dibur damar and are considered separate testimonies, and therefore the testimony concerning the Geneva remains valid. But Rabbi Savar, Rabbi holds no. Technically dibur is kedibur damar, and therefore the testimony about the Geneva is disqualified together with the testimony of the Shechita. You're telling me that Rabbi Yesi holds the shita of Teifli Dibur is Kedibur Damar, but we learned in the Mishnah in Tamura. The Mishnah says, if a person designates an animal by saying, this animal is a substitute for an Eila, a substitute for a Shlamim. He has issued two contradictory statements, and therefore, the halacha is, it's considered a Tmuras Eila. In other words, only the first part is accepted. Dividend Meir. He says, if he intended this outcome from the beginning, that the animal should serve as a substitute for a oila and a shlamim, since it is impossible to call by two names at once, in other words, the only way he can make his kavanah known is by issuing these two apparently contradictory declarations consecutively. So therefore, the halacha is Bava Kamah Daf. His statement stands, and the animal has the status of both a Eila and a Shlamim. But if he said that the animal is a Eila, and then he says, it's considered Tmura Shlamim, the halacha is Tmura Eila. Now, and we discussed this halacha, Nimlach, if he changes his mind before saying that, then the Chilip Shita, it's obvious that he cannot remove the status he already applied to the animal. An animal certainly remains a Eila. It basically not have sense to chop sack. Papa said, we're speaking about a case where the individual changes his mind within the time of Techli Dibur. It basically holds that when one adds to a statement after a pause, even if the addition was made within a short time, it's considered a separate statement, which does not reverse the initial declaration. So this contradicts the explanation given by the Brisa. According to Rabbi Yesi, maintains that when one adds an existing statement, Techli Dibur, it's considered a continuous speech. We see from here that he holds that it's lav kedibur damar. So Amri, the Chacham said, Techli Dibur Dami Ave Chat Deishilas Talmud L'Rav, V'Chat Deishilas Rav L'Talmud. There are two frames that are referring to as within the time frame required for speaking the short phrase. One is the time frame required for a student to greet a Rav, and the other one is the time required for a Rav to greet a student. He less leila basic the Deishilas Talmud L'Rav Shalom Alecha Rabbi Umardi. The fish Deishilas Rav Talmud Shalom Alecha Yislei. When the words are added within the time required for a Talmud to greet his Rav using this phrase, what's up? Peace, Shalom Alecha, Rabbi Umeri, that's a long pause. By contrast, if this statement is added within the short time required for the Rebbe to greet his students, Shalom Alecha, Rabbi Yesi is of the opinion that the added words adds to speech that is continuous, so obviously the first one. Shalom Alecha, Rabbi Umeri, that's a psad, that's a hefsek. Shalom Alecha is not. Omar Rabba said, Eidim Shukhushul Sefer Zamu is a hefsek. Shalom Alecha. The Talmud says to the Rab, Shalom Alecha, Rabbi Umeri. So that's a hefsek. So if it's that span of time, and then he waits, the witnesses again start giving testimony.
What's the there?
Shalom Alecha. It's two words. Amar Rabba says, Eidim Shukhushul Sefer Zamu. Witnesses, let's say a capital crime, who were first contradicted by two other witnesses. And then ultimately the first set of witnesses who Zamu were considered Eidim Zemim, Ne'adogin. They are killed. Because in accordance to the punishment of conspiring witnesses involved in capital case, despite the fact that the testimony was already disqualified prior to the discovery of the conspiracy. The reason is that the contradiction of the testimony is the start of the determining is conspiracy testimony. Shlenigmra, only that the process has not yet been completed at the time of the contradiction. Amar Rava says, "Mina min Allah." From where do I know this? The time you learned in a brisa. If witnesses say, "Midani v'yishplani shesimes ein avdi v'pilashinai," we testify with regards to so and so that he blinded his Eved Kanani, and afterwards knocked out his tooth. And therefore, so what happens? And therefore, the Eved, the Adin is obligated to pay him compensation for the value of the tooth, as that is what the master says. In other words, testimony is a advantage to the Adin. And what happened? And they were found to be Edom Zemin. They pay the value of an eye to the Eved. Now, so Rav explains, the Bryce is written as a Hey Chidami, what is the circumstance of this case? If we say it's exactly as was taught in the Bryce, the Leka Kasachina, that there's no other set of witnesses other than those whose statement is quoted in the Bryce, an opposing set of witnesses was established, who established them as conspiring witnesses. So then you have a few shots. They only pay the value. They pay the value of the eye to the slave. After freeing him by testifying that his master has blinded him, should they be required to pay him the value of the eye? He already left. Right. And furthermore, to make they should be required to pay the value of the entire slave to the master, as they intended to cause him to lose ownership of a slave through the false azama, through the false edus. Right. And furthermore, why does the Brisa say why does the Brisa say that the master says so? In other words, the master's advantage to this master. Harab min echele. Is it really satisfactory to the master that a slave be free as a result of his testimony? Rather, it must be a case involved that rather, it's a case. The Brisa dealing with a case where prior to the testimonies mentioned, the Brisa, two other witnesses came and said, the master first knocked out his slave's tooth, and then simes einei. The master first knocked out his slave's tooth and then blinded his eye. The boy mesev le harav me'einei. In which case, the master is required to free the slave and also give him the value of the eye. And then another set of witnesses came and said, they came and said that the testimony that eye and then knocked out his tooth. So accordingly to this, the Adam would still be required to free his slave. He would be required to give him only the value of the tooth, which is much less than the value of the eye. In this case, the testimony of the first set of witnesses is straight to the testimony of the middle case. Behind, and this is the meaning of what he says, as this is what the master says. In other words, the testimony is an advantage to the master. Why? It means that the middle witnesses say that he owes the value of the tooth is satisfactory to him. According to the claim of the first set, he owes the value of the eye. Since they're now being the contradicting testimonies, the testimony claiming the claim of loss of lesser value is accepted. And the case that the other would have to pay the slave only the value of his tooth. So this judgment corresponds exactly to the testimony of the middle set of witnesses. Now, what does the Brisa say? And Mitzia, that the middle set of witnesses were found to be Edom Zemim. So therefore, the middle set of witnesses pays the value of an eye of the slave, less than the value of the tooth, as this is the amount of monetary damage a slave should incur as a result of the testimony. Shmami knows, so Rabbi learns from here that aklasha, that when you have aklasha, tchilas hazami, that's the beginning of conspiring testimony. Although the testimony of the middle set of witnesses had already been contradicted before it was shown to be Edom Zemim, nevertheless, they can still be established as Edom Zemim at the later stage, which means that they have to pay an amount equivalent to the loss that they were attempting to cause through their testimony. So I see that aklasha tchilas hazami. So Rabbi Abaya says, no. It's possible that the Bryce is discussing a case where a second set of witnesses both reverse the order of events. In other words, by testifying that the tooth was knocked out before blinding the eye, and at the same time rendered the first set of witnesses as Edom Zemim by testifying that these original witnesses were not at the scene of the events they claimed to have witnesses. So it can be argued, even though it's far-fetched, that the testimony of the first set of witnesses is considered to be beneficial for the Adon, because he knows what really happened, as you see from the later testimony. Accordingly, Rav holds that there are a total of 3 sets of witnesses in this case of the Brisa. Abaya holds that there are only 2. Fred, you know what I mean? From where do I say them that the shot of the Brisa is correct? So he says, from the fact that the later clause of the Brisa states that the halacha with regards to the case which the second set of witnesses both reverses the order of events, and ben the he renders the first pair of conspiring witnesses. So you can be alert that the first case as well, stating with regards to both, in which cases both, and in a case which the second set of witnesses both reverses the order of events and renders the first pair as Edom Zim. There's a little bit more, then we'll stop. If Tani save him, Yidano Yishpani Shepila Sashin Avdi Visimus Avdi, Sharev the Mekim Tzim so Nashal May I and the Rav.
Great.
Okay, we'll stop here. Okay.